this week, I think it's fair to say, is by far the most significant week for this lore. You know, up until now, it's been a case of, oh, the Titans, they were looking for the Prime World Soul. Remember that, Prime World Soul. It's like, okay, that's something a bit new, I guess. And they came to Azeroth. It's like, yeah. It's like, oh, they found the old gods. And they had loads of fights with the old gods. And then they got control of Azeroth. And the way we left it last week was they were talking about like a mystery facility that we don't know about. But Brinth was all like, I think I know the facility that they are talking about. And I was like, I can't listen to a word you say. Your voice is so boring. What was that? What was that, Brent? What did you say? I think I know the facility they're talking about. And I was like, oh, great. And so here I was this week, all like, ooh, this is the week. This is the week. Brinth is going to tell us all about this secret mystery facility. And I don't want to spoil anything. Well, I'm going to play it for you right now. But at the risk of spoiling it before we even watch it, you're not going to learn what the secret facility is. But boy, you're going to learn some other stuff. This is big shit. I hope you're ready for this. Redbot Spoilerbot is up, okay? You're about to learn some shit. Let's go.
Conversation.
At the Titan's command, we Keepers began the acclimation. Each installation, all linked to the Manifold, produced vast numbers of Titan-forged workers.
No new news there.
We fired the great forges to fuel the acclimation and empower the Manifold to heal the ravaged
And at this
world.
point, I'm like, okay, just stand shit again. Disappointing.
Then began construction of the Coreway, a direct channel to the heart of Azeroth that would allow the Titans to study the world's soul without harming it. However, as we delved deeper, we encountered certain obstacles. Colossal crystals, which we came to realize were calcified chunks of the world's soul's essence. They are of great power, and I wonder how many yet remain undiscovered beneath the earth, all over the world. By word of the great Khazgaroth, the Titan's research has revealed that Azeroth's world soul is indeed the Prime. Our purpose may yet be fulfilled.
Enormous, powerful chunks of world soul essence. Do you think Beledar and Halifal could be one of them?
Just in case you didn't fucking get it.
Potentially. But it was never within the scope of our edicts to study the crystal.
He mentions the Titan Forge making the Coreway. Did you know it was built to study the world soul?
We were created for the great purpose of serving the Titans, and thus we built it. Its purpose was irrelevant to us. We fulfilled our edicts dependably, and we have strived to do so throughout the millennia, despite Kaz Algar facing many setbacks.
Some good info coming here as well.
Setbacks? What do you mean?
Long ago, the continents of the world split apart, and the machinery that powered our facility was damaged, cut off from the Manifold. We were unable to repair the connection. We operated on auxiliary power for a time, but eventually it ran out, and we fell into disarray.
That must have been the Sundering. It's miraculous that any of this survived intact.
And there we have it. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, "Ooh." There's some good stuff in there. Have you checked Brinth's feet? That is a weird question, but I'm into feet this expansion. Oh, look, yeah, she's got one toe, which is kind of rusty. She's got a rusty toe. And let's go through this bit by bit.
Installation, all linked to the Manifold.
Now, a lot of people are talking about this facility. What facility is this, everyone? What do we think? Because I know a lot of people, and this happened in our chat as we were doing it, were like, oh, that looks like an old god temple. And you're not wrong, particularly when it's like not got any color scheme to it. But yeah, I thought it was all dumb. I thought it was all dumb. It is like an established Titan facility, and I know a lot of people, when they saw this, their initial reaction was like, oh shit, old god shit, why are the Titans repurposing the old god stuff? I don't think that's true. No, Titans have always had like big pyramids and stuff in it as well, as do the old gods. So just saying, maybe there is an element of the Titans repurposing Black Empire facilities. It's not something I've ever considered before. I bet there was like some lore that was going around quite a lot during Kata and stuff like that, and speculation that was going around a lot during that time. But you know, I do often think about Neltharion's notes in the Ordering of Azeroth and Old Gods in the Ordering of Azeroth that we found in Dragonflight, where he's like, oh, typical Titans, you know, claiming others' work as their own. So, no, it wouldn't be the Old Gods corrupting the Titan facilities. It would be like, you know, the Titans build lots of facilities, but there were loads of buildings on Azeroth already from the Black Empire, so maybe they literally just Titanified some Black Empire facilities, and maybe that's why they have quite similar designs, some of them. It's not impossible at all. You know? Not impossible at all. Yeah, and it is very, very close to AQ. Exactly. Titans can corrupt my facility anytime. They seem to build jails. Surely they had the power to destroy. Well, yeah, but why destroy when you can repurpose? You destroy something, you got to rebuild it from scratch. Like, if the work's kind of already been done, you just have to make it all Titany. You know? I don't know, it's just like a renovation at the end of the day. Like an old pub being turned into a McDonald's, or like an old bank being turned into a pub. Exactly. You know, if the old gods are the baddies and the Titans are the goodies, it would be more like an old bank being turned into a pub. Something evil into something good. So yeah, but I don't think I'm wrong in saying that this is Uldum. Yeah, and it is, but it is interesting how many people looked at this and were like, oh, old god, and you know what? Titan pyramids are quite old goddy. So I wouldn't throw that out as a theory, honestly. The idea that maybe they repurposed bits of the Black Empire into their own thing sounds like playing with fire to me, but we know that they have, like, you know, created old gods as well. You know, they've created test tube old gods to study. Is what it is. Does this mean parts of Azeroth's World Soul are tainted by the Void ever since Sargeras stabbed it? Not since Sargeras stabbed it. So it's quite likely that parts of the World Soul are tainted or influenced or empowered by the Void anyway, but that would be because the Black Empire were here for thousands of years before anyone else turned up, doing their thing, you know, like affecting the World Soul and influencing the World Soul. So if the Azeroth World Soul does have some Void shit going on, that would be why, probably not because Sargeras stabbed it. If anything, that would add some Fel into the mix. This pyramids being similar could also be flagging that these cosmic forces are more alike than we originally thought. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, they're all doing the same thing, basically, right? Wouldn't the old god pyramids have been there before the Titans came there? Yes. Wouldn't they have just reused them for their own? Yes, that's what repurposing means. Yes, absolutely. That's what I mean. Yeah, sorry if I didn't make that clear. Yeah, the idea that the Titans got there and there were already lots of Black Empire kind of facilities there, and they were like, well, rather than just build new ones, let's just make them Titany. Pretty cool. Void Lord's evil, but they made Naifu, we think. Anyway, right, let's carry on.
Produced vast numbers of Titan-forged workers.
Yes, there they are. So all of these facilities are linked together in what they call the manifold. I think this is the first time we've heard the term acclimation, you know? So I guess that's just like, you know, acclimatizing the planet and the world soul to the presence and the needs and the ways of the Titans, right? You know, the planet was acclimatized to the Black Empire and the Void at first. So it's kind of like a wiping the slate clean. It's going, this is a Titan planet now, right?
We fired the great forges to fuel the acclimation and empower the manifold.
Is this a new model, or is this
world.
present in something else? Is this a new model, or is this somewhere else? Does manifold imply that the ley lines of Azeroth are actually a Titan creation? I certainly wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think so. It looks new, doesn't it, this model? These bits here look really kind of like detailed, but it could be old. Someone's going to know in my chat. It is possible that the ley lines are something to do with the manifold, yeah. Ley lines being the thing that ties the manifold together is a good theory. Yeah, I think so too. And I love the idea that it's just like this connected network, right? Which the old gods would have had as well.
Then began construction of the Coreway.
And this is where it starts getting really interesting. And the Coreway is fascinating. The Coreway, and we've known this since the very beginning of the expansion, by the way, but the Coreway is literally just a huge, long tunnel down to the World Soul. It gives you access to the World Soul. It is almost certainly why Azeroth asked us to go to Khazalgar. You know when Bran spoke with Azeroth and then went into a coma, and then he woke up and he's like, we got to go to Khazalgar. And it's almost certain that the reason Azeroth wanted us to go to Khazalgar is because that's how you get to the World Soul, the Coreway, the big hole in the middle of Khazalgar, in the middle of Dornagal. And don't forget that until literally 5 minutes before we arrived in Khazalgar, this was functional. If it hadn't been for Xalatath and the Nerubians attacking, then we would have just gone to Khazalgar, we'd have all made friends, and we'd have been like, yo, let's go down the Coreway and speak to the World Soul. And that's what we'd have done. All of this is happening because we weren't allowed to do that. Because when we got to Khazalgar, the Nerubians attacked, and that's when the Coreway broke. That's when the Coreway got filled in. That's why the Nerubians are attacking Dornagal at the beginning of the expansion. They're not just attacking us. They attack us, but they're also attacking Dornagal. That's when you go there, after you kind of clear the beach, you have to jump on, like, you know, you have to jump on like a mount and like blow up all the Nerubians that are fighting there. But in that battle, in that attack, they've destroyed access to the Coreway, and it is still broken now. And that's why we can't just like rock on down to the World Soul and have a chat. Do you think the new regions and future patches will have us going deeper into the Coreway? It seems logical, doesn't it? We had to blow the Nerubians. I mean, you know, sometimes you just have to be persuasive. Sometimes you have to use whatever avenue you've got.
A direct channel to the heart of Azeroth that would allow the Titans to study the World Soul.
I love the World Soul music that plays in this room as well, by the way.
Without harming it. However, as we delved deeper, we encountered certain obstacles. Colossal crystals, which we came to realize were calcified chunks of the World Soul's essence.
Boom. Okay, now this is obviously the biggest lore reveal of this entire quest line. Like the first two installments of this quest line included. This is huge. This is a very big thing because this is Beledar. Okay? This might not be representing Beledar specifically, but this model is the Beledar model, and it tells us many, many things. It is just a big crystal, just like the concept art that we've already seen in the concept art book told us. You know, we knew it was almost certainly a big crystal because all the concept art in the War Within book, I've got it right here. I know everyone's been seeing this on the Art Blast as well, so even if you didn't have the book, you will have seen this art on the Art Blast that coincidentally Blizzard put out last week or the week before, just before this quest line dropped, weirdly. Where is it? Where are you? I love the Arathi concept art. Holy shit, it's so good. I love it all and so easy. So yeah, this is the concept art for Beledar. which confirmed pretty much, you know, because all the different concepts of it are it as a crystal, and this is the one that they clearly went with. So we've known for a while that it is just one big singular thing, and this does confirm that, you know, because I mean it's showing us it, right? So what does this do? Well, this changes some theories, that's for sure. So the idea that this is like a Naru seems pretty unlikely at this stage, doesn't it? Even though it is doing the whole light darkness thing, right? The idea that it's a spaceship seems pretty unlikely at this stage because according to this report, and I see no reason to doubt it, we encountered certain obstacles, colossal crystals, which we came to realize were calcified chunks of the world soul's essence. And these crystals are in there. They're in there already. You know? Like, these didn't fall to Earth during the Titan's reign. Boom, 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 boom. They were in there already. What does that mean? Sorry, I had to fetch and take out first. My theory for Beledar now, these mentioned crystals are like blood clots or scabs where Azeroth either put concentrations of one power into stasis to stop them from overtaking this part of the world, or especially in the case of Beledar, she used light to enshrine a pocket of void, which now, after the sword, attempts to break out. It could even be the void breaking out is what causes midnight. Maybe. Would you like to hear my theory? Because what this seems to be telling us is that Beledar is basically Azerite. It's basically like a big old chunk of dried Azeroth essence. But you know, it doesn't look like Azerite, does it? And you know, it does look a lot like a Naru or something from the light, doesn't it? And you know, the Titans found them there, but that doesn't mean they formed there. Do you know what I think? I think that when Azeroth was a world soul and before the old gods found it, I think the light found it. And I think that these chunks, these crystals, are the light equivalent of old gods, are the light equivalent of Titans. I think these things were chucked out into space to find the prime world soul or any world soul and create like a big light being. Maybe this is how Narus are created, who knows? And these things like just thudded straight into the planet, into the Earth's surface, and they were having an effect on Azeroth when the Black Empire arrived. The Black Empire kind of like stopped all that. They dug in, they like kind of worked their way into the ground with their tentacles and shit, and they kind of brought that to a halt and started putting like the void influence on the world soul. But for 100, 1,000, 10,000, goodness only knows how long that world soul was being influenced by the light before the old gods came and defeated them. Or same idea, but they came after the Black Empire. Maybe the Naru saw what the old gods were doing on Azeroth and were like, we got to protect this world soul, and also we'd quite like it for ourselves. And that's when they fired out these crystals. Maybe this was the light attempting to defend or, you know, get a piece of the Azeroth pie once they'd already seen that it was there because the Black Empire had discovered it. Whatever the order of that, I think, yeah, it is everyone calling cosmic dibs on Azeroth. Absolutely, that's what it is. Why would they be made out of Azeroth's essence then? I'm so glad you asked. Why would the Titans, as they are studying these light Naru crystals, why would they think that it was made? Why would they study them and study the world soul and conclude that they are made out of Azeroth's essence? I know, but do you? Because the light had already had an effect on the world soul by this point. If these things did get here before the Black Empire and they were the light version of old gods, and they did come into the world's surface, and they were affecting the world soul in the same way that the Black Empire later did, in the same way that the Titans later did, yes, a lot of Azeroth's essence is going to be made of the same thing, using the same cosmological forces as these light crystals. A lot of Azeroth's essence is light realm. So the Titans are like, oh, these crystals are made from Azeroth's essence. And it's like, no, Azeroth's essence has influence from these crystals. It's the other way round. You say like the light isn't native from Azeroth. Exists any lore explaining how or where the light was created? Yes. Yes, there is. In line 1 of Chronicle. As Chronicle tells it, the light was the first force in the Great Dark Beyond, in the universe, and it's a very kinetic energy. It's a very movement-filled energy. It's an energetic energy, and as it like spread out across the universe, when it receded from certain areas, what was left was the void. So whereas like the light is very kinetic and very kind of like jittery and movementy, the void is entropic. So it's just kind of like left there in the bits that light recedes from. And that's how void was created. And we, you know, whatever. That's how Chronicle tells it. But what are you going to do? I just think that since the Titans are world souls, that's how they identified it, and it's more likely Naru are just crystallized world souls. I don't, but I'm not saying you're wrong. Sorry, this has already been talked about, but this is all from what the Titans are telling us. They could be twisting the truth. They could be twisting the truth, but you've got to remember who these reports are for. These reports are for themselves. So they wouldn't necessarily be lying in these reports, but they might be wrong. They might be mistaken, which is what, and I think a great example of that is when they say, oh, these big crystals, they are made from chunks of Azeroth's essence. And it's like, well, I don't think they are. I think that they are, that Azeroth's essence reminds you of these crystals because they've already had like an effect on them. You know? If Chronicle comes from the perspective of the Titans, then that would mean the Titans know that the light is not the same as Azeroth's essence. Well, so I don't want to get into a big conversation about like what the Titans' perspective means, but the Titans' perspective does not mean that they sat down and wrote Chronicle. You know, like if I say that if all you watch is Nobble videos, which you should because they're brilliant, but if all you ever watched on YouTube was Nobble videos and you never played WoW and you never watched anyone else's videos and you never read Chronicles, you never read any of the books, then your entire understanding of like the lore of WoW and the history of Azeroth would be from Nobble's perspective. Does that make sense? Now, that doesn't mean he sat down and wrote all the lore, but you are seeing all of that through the prism of Nobble telling it to you. You are learning the lore through his perspective. Now, that means that you might misunderstand something he said because of a turn of phrase, because he phrased something differently and you interpreted it differently. You know, anything he misunderstands will be passed on to you in your understanding of it. Any speculation he has or something he takes for granted that he just says will become something that you take for granted as just like plain fact. Anything he forgets to tell you will be something you don't know. You know? So like, it doesn't mean that the Titans literally sat down and wrote Chronicle. It means that just like so much of what we know about the history of Azeroth is by definition from like the records that the Titans have left and their own understanding. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean everything's propaganda. some of it probably is, but it just means you're seeing it from one person's reporting of it. Like, a lot of what we know about the ancient Britons comes from the perspective of the Roman Empire and what they wrote about ancient Britons, you know? And it's just bearing that in mind when you learn about something. So you know, like, maybe that kind of this is how the light was created, this is how the void was created, maybe that comes from the Titans, or maybe that comes from somewhere else, you know? Maybe that, like, who knows? We know that Chronicle is like an in-game existing book, or at least, you know, the Cosmos chart and stuff like that is super interesting. It's kind of like open for interpretation, it's open for twisting around, but yeah. And just because they know what the light is doesn't mean they don't know what, like, a void, doesn't mean they know what, like, a Naru is. And, like, these things are, like, Beledar and presumably these other crystals as well, reek of Naru. They reek of Naru. Like, the whole changing from void to light thing, like, the Arathi know a thing or two about the light, and they worship it as a light god, you know? There's no reason why the Titans and the Titan Watchers would be able to look at it and go, hey, that's a Naru, or something like that. Maybe the world souls are created neutral and Titans are arcane influenced world souls. Yes, 100% Nubius, that's what I think, yeah. Each faction is trying to have Azeroth born into their faction. No, that's what we've been saying on this channel for, like, years at this point. Yeah, no, that's absolutely what we think. Yeah. They are the light equivalent of life's trees and roots. Doesn't mean that Beledar is related to the Naru. No, you're right. It doesn't mean that Beledar is related to the Naru, but it is doing a lot of things that Naru do, and it definitely emits, like, light energy, which I think it's reasonable to assume that it's from the light realm in some way. And I like this line. I think this line where they say, which we came to realize were calcified chunks of the world soul's essence. They might be 100% right about that, or this could be the case. This could be a case of an unreliable narrator. This could be them. This is the conclusion they came to in their studies, but they might be wrong. And us knowing more about the lore and the universe that in some ways than the Titans do at this point in history, we might be able to conclude something different. And I'm tempted to think, all I'm saying is my speculation, and I'm tempted to think that they assumed these were calcified chunks of Azeroth's world soul because they shared many properties with Azeroth's world soul. But what if the reason that they shared many properties with Azeroth's world soul is because these have been having an influence on Azeroth's world soul? These have been trying to turn Azeroth's world soul into a being of the light. So yeah, they are made up of a lot of the same stuff. It would be like if I did a big shit into a bucket of water, right? And the shit came and floated to the surface. Now, imagine the Titans were like, we've got to find the prime bucket of water. And they found the bucket of water. And they studied the bucket of water. And they're like, well, we know what this water is made of. It's brown. It's made of, like, fecal matter. Okay. And then they found my shit floating around later on. They were like, oh, this is a calcified chunk of the water because it's made of the same stuff. You know, you could see why you think that. Like, if this like you had been sent to study the water and you studied the water before you found the shit, okay, you'd be like, okay, I know what this water is made up of. And then when you find the shit, you're like, oh wow, this is like a congealed version of the water. It's the same stuff, but you've got it the wrong way round. It wasn't the water that congealed into the shit. It was the shit that fell in the water and made the water shitty. Hear what I'm saying? I feel like that's quite a good way of explaining it, honestly. Shit theory tally, and on that.
They are of great power.
Are we still talking about my shits now?
And I wonder how many yet remain undiscovered beneath the earth.
Right, now this is another... Do you know what I think of when he says this? I think of, and the red bot spoiler bot is up, I think of the island that the goblins and the Arathi are talking about in Dornegal in patch 11.0.5. In patch 11.05, we know that there is an island that has just been discovered by the goblins. We don't know where it is, but we know that it's been calling people to it. And when the goblins got there, they found a huge light crystal. Not a light crystal, I take it back. A huge crystal. And then they fucked off, and now they get an expedition to go there. And the Arathi are getting an expedition to go there as well, because they're like, we kind of like crystals too. And so I don't know if it's going to, I'm assuming it's going to be 11.1, but maybe it'll be 11.0.7, where we go there and there's going to be some shit going down. Now, a lot of very good speculation has speculated like maybe this crystal on this island is the top of Beledar. You know, maybe it's where Beledar struck the ground. So you've got the top of it on this island, and then you've got the bottom of it below in Hallowfall. And I've found that a very compelling theory. I always said I didn't think that's what it was going to be, but I really like it as a theory. This, for me, would seem to confirm that it is not Beledar on the new island, and that it's just another one of these crystals. I wouldn't mind if it was, I wouldn't be surprised if it was literally one of these graphical assets here. So I think, you know, it's not a coincidence that they are laying this bit of lore down before, well, next week, when patch 11.0.5 goes live, and we're suddenly talking about a new big crystal on an island somewhere. So, you know, because we like data mining and because we like the PTR, we've heard that conversation before we've seen this. But in the normal order of things, like, you know, as the story of World of Warcraft is being told, we see this before we hear those conversations in Dornegal. When does it go live? The 20th. So, yeah, next reset. Or 21st. Anyway, next reset. Those crystals that surround Beledar look like protective wards. They do a bit. Somehow remind me of the intro quest to the Broken Shore, where you have to break some crystal wards so you can break the crystal afterwards. Also, why are the surrounding crystals significantly different than Beledar? I think, you know, because this is one that they've seen. And these are ones which are like, I wonder how many yet remain undiscovered. So these ones like represent the undiscovered ones, really. You know, here's one that we know of. I wonder how many there are. So this happened that the goblins Arathi set off looking for a crystal and found one? No. The goblins were out. Some goblins unconnected to the expansion so far were out, and they heard a calling, much like, you know, the Arathi were called by Beledar, according to them. And they were called to this island off their course, and they went to investigate, and they found it, and they were like, well, this is freaky and eerie and yucky, and we're going to get away from here. And now they've informed the other goblins, and Galazar is setting up an expedition to go and investigate it. Do you think the top of Beledar is pyramid-shaped? Good shout. Linking it to the very first thing we talked about here. So Kalandor has one, and other land masses. Well, you can speculate that they do, I guess. Maybe. Let's carry on.
All over the world. By word of the great Khazgoroth, the Titan's research has revealed that Azeroth's world soul is indeed the Prime.
And that's probably quite important as well. I mean, we had kind of concluded already that it was, but having it flat out just said, yeah, this shit's the Prime, man. This is the Prime shit right here.
Our purpose may yet be fulfilled.
Enormous, powerful chunks of world soul essence. Do you think Beledar and Hallowfall could be one of them?
Yes.
Potentially. But it was never within the scope of our edicts to study the crystal.
Also giving us a get out clause there. Do we have any indication of the difference between a normal world soul and the Prime world soul? Yeah. The Prime world soul is just like better. It's just like super mega powerful. It's just like awesome. I'm not even joking. That's like literally what it is. There were 3 other uncut gems around it in the projection. Maybe they are Azeroth's calcified essence, but Beledar is different somehow. Yeah, maybe. I mean, like I say, those could be crystals that they have already discovered, or they could represent the crystals that they're talking about here that they don't know of, that they're speculating might exist. So, you know, whatever you want it to be at any moment, really, for your speculation, I would say.
He mentions the Titan Forge making the Coreway. Did you know it was built to study the world soul?
I mean, I feel like we kind of knew that already. So, yeah.
We were created for the great purpose of serving the Titans, and thus we built it. Its purpose was irrelevant to us. We fulfilled our edicts dependably, and we have strived to do so throughout the millennia, despite Kaz Algar facing many setbacks.
And this is great too. I like this stuff.
What do you mean?
Long ago, the continents of the world split apart, and the machinery that powered our facility was damaged, cut off from the manifold. We were unable to repair the connection. We operated on auxiliary power for a time, but eventually it ran out, and we fell into disarray.
No, this is not the PTR series.
That must have been the Sundering. It's miraculous that any of this survived intact.
So it's great, like the Sundering, and we've talked about the Sundering a lot before. Like, did the Sundering affect Kaz Algar? And it did, yeah. It didn't necessarily change the topography of Kaz Algar, though I think it did a little bit. There are bits underwater in Kaz Algar that look like they would have been above water before the Sundering. And we know that the Sundering, like, cut them. What's interesting is that they cut them off from, like, the manifold, which is probably what led to them, Unbound forsaking their edicts, and the Titans at one point trying to wipe them out. I think we can gather the evidence from around Kaz Algar that at one point the decision was made that the Watchers were going to be like, we're going to wipe the Earth out. And they were stopped from doing that. So I think we'll probably learn more about that later on as well. Yeah. Yeah, some of this is like just filling in or reiterating stuff that we already knew. The main takeaway from all of this is definitely that Beledar would certainly seem to be, in the Titans' opinion, the calcified essence of Azeroth. Like Azerite, but not Azerite. Let's ignore my theory for a moment about what it actually is. That whole like Azeroth but not Azeroth thing, that's, oh my god, that's so interesting because, yeah, these bits of calcified essence are yellow, like the light. And these are ones they discovered when they first got there. But now, Azerite is yellow and blue, like light and arcane. Do you see what I'm getting at here? When they, let's say this literally is just the calcified essence of Azeroth, i.e. Azerite. Why doesn't it look like Azerite? Well, because there was no arcane influence on it then. It was just light. So Azerite was just light colored then. But since then, there's been lots of arcane influence on the world soul. So now Azerite is yellow and blue. But still only half yellow and half blue. And if Beledar is an old chunk of Azerite, as the Titans are suggesting, it's probably quite concerning that it sometimes turns to void. Like, if the light influence on the world soul sometimes turns to void, that should be very concerning. When did the light influence Azeroth? Well, before the Titans got there, clearly. And that's what I'm saying. Maybe it is a being of the light in the first place. Maybe the light got there before the Black Empire and influenced it first. And the world soul of Eonar was green and blue for life and arcane, guys. Yeah, if the Titans are right, and Beledar is just a big chunk of old Azerite, it's all light-colored, and the blue came later after the Titan influence, which would suggest that at this stage, when this piece of Azerite was created, and don't forget, this piece of Azerite could have been created before the Black Empire got there. So it could be that either the light was influencing Azeroth before the Black Empire got there, or it could be that Azeroth is simply a light being to begin with. Either one of those things could be true for it to create a large chunk of Azerite, which is just made of light, basically, which it would seem to be. And yeah, Azerite now is gold and blue because it's got the Titan influence on it, but also that old chunk of Azerite in the middle of Hallowfall does sometimes turn to void, and maybe that's a representation of the Black Empire's influence on the world soul. Yeah, what should also be mentioned is Beledar does not share a color, they fight for the whole crystal. Yeah, but that's in keeping with how the light works when it comes to Naru and things like that. Naru go through a light and dark cycle. So that could be just a natural occurrence of it being a chunk of light forged Azerite, as it were. Or it could be a later influence from the Void and the Black Empire on it. I wonder. I don't know. I wonder. There's no arcane in the chunk. Why is the Void relevant then? Well, because the Titans would have got there after both the light and the Void. If this is a chunk of if this is a chunk of Azerite from before the Titans got there, and they discovered it after they got there, so that would suggest it is. Then either Azeroth was influenced by the light before or during the Black Empire, or it was a light being in the first place. It just started turning to void after the sword pierced Azeroth. For the Arathi it did, but they've only been there 16 years. So that was definitely a trigger, but I think it's probably dangerous to assume it never changed before that. We can't say either way, but it's quite possible that it changed in the tens of thousands of years since it was formed, because it was formed before the Titans got there. You know, so it's at least as old as the Black Empire. Probably older, isn't it? Let's be real. Yeah, we do see the Muir of Nolgod reaching out for the crystal in the city. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, completely. It could also just mean that Azeroth was from the beginning a pure being. Gold does not have to mean light. It does not have to mean light, but if Beledar is indeed a chunk of Azerite, it's got light coming out of it. It's got like light energy coming out of it. The Arathi recognize light energy when they feel it. Anduin recognizes light energy when they feel it. Like, they use the light's power. They are paladins. Like, that shit is light, you know? When does Eldan come back? Last Titan, you know that. Perhaps the sword released a pocket of black blood, and that's what the shifting crystal to the void every so often. Yeah, it could be. Could be, yeah. Could be a radiant song, not a golden song. You might want to ask priests what damage they do with their light powers, mate. I think it's a spaceship with a Naru in it. It reminds me too much of Oshugun, Genadar, and the Ethereals. I mean, it does look like that. Sure, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the light does radiant damage. So the radiant song would absolutely suggest that it's light adjacent. Yeah. Mind you, the radiant song is just what they're calling it. So yeah, from what I gather from this is that either Azeroth is a being of light originally, or it has been influenced by the light at some point in its history and life, in the same way that it's been influenced by the Void and now the Titans. Do you think that's fair to say?